This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials, and the Millennials joining me today are Andrew the Fuji Fulgeniti and our producer Adam Couture, who's taking the place of Ryan the Squirrel Brady, who happens to be on vacation. So Adam may, talk a little bit more than he normally does, so that's okay. Right? So welcome, guys. How's everybody doing?
Good.
That's awesome.
Happy to be here.
First up, AOC interviewed by Anderson Cooper about her lack of facts and her 4 Pinocchios that the Washington Post gave her, right? So this is what's we're playing. We want to play this clip because basically she's finally been asked, do facts matter? Because your facts are so often more than not wrong. And Anderson Cooper asks her this question, and here is the clip.
One of the criticisms of you is that your math is fuzzy. The Washington Post recently awarded you 4 Pinocchios.
Oh my goodness.
For misstating some statistics about Pentagon spending.
If people want to really blow up one figure here or one word there, I would argue that they're missing the forest for the trees. I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
But being factually correct is important.
It's absolutely important. And whenever I make a mistake, I say, okay, this was clumsy. And then I restate what my point was. But it's not the same thing.
Yeah, right. She restates her point with facts, because initially she provides no facts to back up anything that she says. I mean, finally, Anderson Cooper asked some hardball questions, even though of course he could have really followed up and been a lot more direct, but finally she's being asked, why are you so fast and loose with facts? What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I like how she said it's people get tied up in these little minutia. She calls them semantics, but what Anderson's referencing is like when people attack her, the big facts, like what it's going to cost for these massive policy decisions that are going to alter the shape of a country. It's like, well, it's semantics.
Exactly.
The ideas are more important than what actually is going to take to accomplish these goals.
Don't worry about the facts. Just give me control of the entire economy. What could possibly go wrong? We'll sort out the details.
Well, welcome, producer Adam Couture. He's on the map, man. Yeah, I mean, the thing is as you said, with the Green New Deal, it's going to take over the entire economy. And she's like, well, it doesn't matter how much it's going to cost because, no one's asked me this question before, Anderson. So, what matters is my intent is what matters.
She doesn't know. She doesn't know the answer, right? So it's like that's why she's like, it doesn't matter because it's just like we just have to do it. It's almost like Obamacare. We just have to pass it, and then we'll figure out the rest.
The big thing too is she's almost like shocked that anybody wants to see actual proposals for her policy.
Exactly.
She's like, well, what do you mean we can't just say sunshine and roses? Like, if you're gonna like try to suggest legislation, you need to have actual legislation to implement.
So Fuji, do millennials, do they care about facts, or does that not matter, or does it just matter where you fall on the political spectrum?
Yeah, I think millennials care about facts. I mean, I think we get this bad rap for just being the ones that are all behind these big ideas and stuff. Yeah, but I mean, because it's easy to get
focusing on memes and not anything else.
Let's be honest, a lot of these big ideas that the AOCs of the world are selling are they're pitching them to millennials, right? So they're targeting us.
Absolutely.
But I think we care about facts. I mean.
Yeah,
I do.
Absolutely. So next up, Biden says that on day 1, he's going to cure cancer.
Speaking of facts.
We have a clip. There's no more need to set this clip up. Here it is.
I promise you, if I'm elected president, you're going to see the single most important thing that changes in America is we're going to cure cancer.
First of all, curing cancer would be a fantastic thing, okay? Because cancer has touched everyone's life, including and especially Joe Biden. So I'm not laughing at that. What I'm laughing at is here's a gentleman who's been in office for 8 years as vice president of the United States, the second most powerful person in the world. And he's so close to being president, of course, if anything happened to Barack Obama. And now he's saying, well, if you elect me this time, I'm going to cure cancer. What do you guys think?
Honestly, it took me a while to process because my initial reaction was my jaw literally dropped and I was like, how could you do this? But honestly, now that I think about it, it was the only thing he had left. Every other Democratic nominee has promised so much that there was nothing. They've promised free healthcare. They've promised free education. They get rid of debt, free universal basic income. He's like, what do we have left? And I guess his team was like, cancer. Let's get rid of that. So that's all they had left.
They're bribing millennials, right? This is all about bribing millennials.
Well, I don't know if you saw, but President Trump mentioned that in his kickoff speech, too. He said, because he's actually doing things to help cure cancer. I don't know if you saw the news stories, but there was a woman, he's making it easier to try.
The right to try. Yes,
the right to try. And so
which makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah, so President Trump mentioned that in his speech, and some of the kind of more left-leaning news sources are trying to knock him for that. Whereas you have Joe Biden out here just saying, I'll single-handedly cure cancer. But
that's right.
He was
no
vice
details, by the
president
way.
for 8 years, and they wouldn't allow right to try.
Maybe
Yeah.
Anderson Cooper should ask him. I mean, you're going to get 4 Pinocchios for this? Because, how are you going to make that happen? Facts don't matter. I'm just going to make it happen. I haven't made it happen so far.
No.
So next up, Elizabeth Warren, talking about bribing millennials. Candidate Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, promises U.S. college debt forgiveness. Here is the clip.
That's why I'm calling for universal free college and the cancellation of student loan debt of up to $50,000 for 42 million Americans.
Here we go, guys. Once again, the Democrats are all in on bribing millennials. I mean, the purpose of our podcast couldn't be no more on point now more than ever with the Democratic Party, because they see how important your vote is as millennials, and they're willing to pay whatever it takes to buy it. Thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that this is all target for millennials. I don't know if we're going to buy it. Like, my generation is going to completely buy in. I mean, it sounds great. Like, I want my student debt, student loans paid off. That'd be great. But when you look at it, I don't think they see it as realistic. I think they're going to look through that and say, this is a campaign promise. This is something that's because for the most part, let's be honest, campaign promises aren't kept, right? And they're
pretty much
they're trying to buy votes,
of course.
Yeah.
I mean, but no sooner did she say this than Bernie Sanders came out just a couple days ago, and he said, well, me too. I am going to have a college debt forgiveness plan as well. And we have a clip on Bernie.
We will make a full and complete education a human right in America to which all of our people are entitled. This means making public colleges, universities, and HBCUs tuition-free and debt-free by tripling the work-study program, expanding Pell Grants, and other financial incentives.
He's literally saying the exact same thing as Senator Elizabeth Warren, of course, in a different way, but saying it's going to be free. It's going to be free. And it's a human right now. Healthcare was a human right. Now free college is a human right. Doesn't matter whether you are capable of going to college or whether you even want to go to college. What matters is that it's going to be free. So if it's going to be free, then why wouldn't you just go to college and put off work for 4 years because it's free, right?
Well, you know what bothers me a lot about all these Democrats just saying this, like, we're going to resolve student loan debt and that, is they never get to the actual root of the issue. They're just trying to throw money at the problem.
Well said.
And a big thing is college is very unaffordable right now. And we're seeing that it's unaffordable is because everybody's saying, well, everybody should go to college. And our economy, we have a lack of people going into the trades, which we still need. Those
Absolutely.
are good jobs.
More than ever.
Yeah, they support the economy. And so we just resolve the student debt, make it go away. But if you don't solve the issue, isn't it just going to come back in 5-10 years?
So typical Democrats. I mean, Adam hit the nail on the head because that drives me crazy. What people forget is like, why is there a problem, right?
Right.
Where did this student loan debt problem come from? It's because, first of all, they told you, they told my generation, you have to go to college, right? That's the only way to get a job. So everyone felt the need and pressure to go to college. Our parents felt the pressure to put us through college.
Yep.
And, under the Obama administration, the ability and the ease to get a student loan, like it was so easy. Anyone could
Just
get
like
a
a
student
mortgage,
loan.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where the problem started. So colleges are like, well, everyone's coming to college. We can just charge whatever we want.
Exactly, because
so
the money
that's
is
why college
free.
is so expensive, right? Because the colleges are businesses, so they're just trying to make money. It's like, well, if everyone's going to come, we're just going to up the prices. And now we're in this problem
Well said.
that they started, and now they're saying, well, let's
make
it all
free.
go away.
Yeah.
Let's make it all go away.
Because they want to do the same thing with healthcare,
And
right?
they
messed up healthcare.
They're demonizing the
Yes,
colleges.
exactly.
They're demonizing everyone, else except themselves for saying like
for causing the problem.
Yes.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is when you impose a tax to pay for this new entitlement, right? the people that are going to be paying for this tax, in part, are people who didn't go to college.
Right.
So this is a transference of wealth from those who didn't go to college to those who did. That's not socialism. I mean, if anything, you're making people poorer, who didn't have as much of an opportunity as you did or chose not to go to college. The entire idea is just ridiculous. But I'm really curious, do you think millennials as a whole, as a majority, do you think this is something they're going to buy into, especially those millennials who are still paying off debt that they may have even occurred, 10 years ago? Thoughts? Come on, guys.
I think you're going to see a big divide here kind of amongst those millennials. The millennials that are working to pay off their student debts, the ones that are kind of working through college and made smart decisions. They went to colleges that they could afford. They kind of made that decision early on.
Yes.
And they looked at college as an investment in their future.
Yes, because community college is very accessible and it's very inexpensive. But of course, Elizabeth Warren, what she said in her little speech about college, she said everybody should go to a really good college, high quality college. And basically she's inferring that community college, without actually saying it, isn't good. That's not so.
Right.
No, absolutely not.
But this is part. It's no longer just everybody should go to college for free. It's that everybody should get into the college of their choice for free. I mean, this is socialized college.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Adam on this point. I think there's going to be a divide amongst the millennial generation on whether or not they agree with just wiping out all of student loan debt, because I mean there are people that made good decisions. They looked at college as an investment. They worked really hard, and maybe they're right on the verge of paying off student loan debt, but they put all this work into it. What about them?
Absolutely. What about them? I know. I mean,
are they going to get something, out of this deal? Like, no, it's like you worked hard. Sorry. Like you were smart, but these people weren't. So we're just going to equalize.
How about the baby boomers out there? They've been paying for their kids to go to college. I mean, do they get reasbursed?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
a good point.
I want college reparations, from that's what I want. As a boomer, that's what I'm looking for.
Don't give the Democrats any more ideas. They have enough things to spend our money on.
So next up, Neil Cavuto interviewed the founders of Home Depot, Bernie Marcus and Ken Langone. He interviewed them just recently, and the reason why we're playing this clip from them, it's just a brief clip, is because the Democrats are trying to promise millennials everything. They're trying to buy their votes. And here you have two gentlemen who started 40 years ago in 1979 during a recession. They had nothing. They had no credit. They had no money. And yet they started this company during a recession with nothing. And now, of course, they're incredibly successful and billionaires. Here's the clip.
This Home Depot is probably the poster child for capitalism. When I hear Bernie Sanders talking about socialized, this could never happen in a socialized city. Never happen. I mean,
but it happened in a pretty difficult economic period.
Interest rates were 21%.
Right.
And the worst.
That's true. Interest rates were 21%. And here are two gentlemen during a recession, and you had really high interest rates. Jimmy Carter was president of the United States, and they managed to start this company with an idea. No one would extend them credit. They finally found someone that would, and they started Home Depot. And now look at Home Depot. It's in every major community you can possibly imagine. I mean, it's an icon. And to me, it's wonderful to hear this entire interview. It's worth listening to Cavuto's interview because it talks about the possibilities in America and in American capitalism if you're willing to take risks. But if you listen to the other side, the Democrats, they say, no, people who take risks, they're the problem. They're the bad people, and they need to pay for all these new entitlements like free education and free healthcare. Gentlemen, thoughts on this? Millennials, I especially want to hear your thoughts on this.
So that was during the, if I'm not mistaken, OPEC oil crisis too, right? With the gas lines?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, as a millennial, kind of like just coming into my professional career, that terrifies me that they're like, yeah, I don't want to go with this Bernie socialism stuff. Give me the gas lines and the high inflation. I'd rather do that all over again.
And in socialism and communism, the food lines, right? They have food lines too. I mean, just go to Venezuela right now, but they also had it in the former Soviet Union. They had food lines all the time. specifically bread lines. So,
I mean, I really think that millennials don't want to be given everything like the Democrats are trying to give. I truly believe that we've been raised on the American dream, right? Like my parents had it, the boomer generation, lived it, and I think we want to be able to follow in those footsteps. I think the Democrats are just trying to co-opt our generation because of the massive voting block by giving us saying
free stuff.
Not saying just like here, take it. They're saying like you're entitled to it. Like the government owes you this, and it's kind of brainwashing, right? Instead of saying like go out and earn it, they're saying you deserve this. You
Absolutely.
deserve free education.
Yes.
You deserve it, and it's a smart tactic.
Yes.
But I truly believe at the core, millennials want to earn everying. I mean,
obviously, I hope you're right.
Everything.
Obviously, I hope you guys are right because obviously there are many, many millennials who have debt that is hung over from college, and they're looking at that going, I might vote for Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders because they're going to forgive that college debt, so they might vote for their self-interest because people tend to vote their pocketbook.
Right.
I'm just hoping that they take a higher plane and look at these two individuals, these two icons of industry, Bernie Marcus and Ken Langone, and say, you know what, that's possible. This is the way they did it. If they can do it, I can do it too. At least that's what I'm hoping happens. So next up, Trump signs an executive order. He's requiring hospitals to publish the price of services. So for everyone out there, when you go to a hospital and you're having a procedure, whether it's an emergency procedure or otherwise, the hospital really doesn't provide you a detailed bill or a detailed estimate in advance of what the procedure or the services they're going to be providing will cost. And so at the end of the day, what you usually get is a bill from your insurance company. It says, here's your copay, here's what you owe, but there's never a detailed bill for you to be able to make an intelligent decision. Here's the clip from Trump signing this executive order.
For too long, it's been virtually impossible for Americans to know the real price and quality of healthcare services and the services they receive. As a result, patients face significant obstacles shopping for the best care at the best price, driving up healthcare costs for everyone. With today's historic action, we are fundamentally changing the nature of the healthcare marketplace.
There you have it. I mean, Republicans want you to be educated about the price of goods and services. In this way, you can be informed and an educated consumer. Democrats, however, want to hide the real cost of products and services, which is why they want Medicare for all. I mean, they want socialized medicine. Well, here we have a president who's saying, you know what? If you actually knew what it cost, you would probably be a consumer and act accordingly and go shop accordingly. And I just want to say this. A good friend of mine who's a doctor said to me, he says, Mark, the way our healthcare system works now, it would be the equivalent of going into your local grocery store chain, filling up your cart all the way to the top with food, and then pushing it right through the checkout counter without paying for it and saying, see ya. I mean, that's exactly the way healthcare is now if you're a doctor. Guys, what do you think about this executive order that Trump signed?
Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense. I mean, especially at a time now where there's like so much volatility with the healthcare market and like there's so many changes coming and being talked about. It's like consumers are very smart, right? I mean, they like to be informed. They like to shop, and because you get your best prices that way, right? So why not with healthcare? I mean, I don't know how we're making these decisions, or we've been making these decisions and have no idea what the cost of this is. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, it's been so natural. I mean, I've never thought about it really. Now that I'm having to pay my own healthcare costs, it makes sense.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
And it's no different than what the Democrats are trying to do, of course, with free college, right? They're trying to hide the cost of college. So you really don't know, because that way, if the check comes from the government and it goes directly to the college, you don't really care what it costs, do you? And that's exactly what they're trying to do here. Specifically, the executive order aims to force hospitals to disclose the costs of healthcare services. The order directs the Department of Health and Human Services to issue a new rule that mandates hospitals reveal the price of procedures in a patient-friendly format. Couture.
Yeah, Mark, I mean, you mentioned it. The scary thing about all of this to me, like even going back to colleges too, is that the Democrats want us to rely more and more and more on the government for all of this.
Yes.
Because even with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal, those that don't want or aren't willing to work or can't are going to get a government job then.
Absolutely.
So and I think this gets to the point of like the capitalism versus socialism.
Yep.
Trump's the consumer, the free marketplace versus the government.
Intelligent consumers who are informed, transparency versus basically paying off millennials to get their vote. I mean,
let people know what they're paying for, and they're going to make good decisions with their own money.
No doubt in my mind. And next up, a really funny story. Iran, an Iranian nuclear power plant is hit by an AC/DC virus. Two of Iran's uranium enrichment plants were struck by a cyber attack earlier this week that shut down computers and blared AC/DC songs, according to reports from Bloomberg News. After shutting down the network, the attackers played the song Thunderstruck by the hard rock band AC/DC at maximum volume. Okay, guys, we don't have a clip on this, but I just want to say this. I want to paint a picture. In my opinion, the picture that's painted in my mind is Donald Trump has a little button, and he's sitting in the Oval Office, and he's got somebody from his cybersecurity council saying, "Okay, Mr. President, if you turn that button, AC/DC is going to be..."
Or just on Spotify hitting shuffle playlist or something, and that's what came on.
What's the movie? Our amps go to 11, so we have the extra volume.
I'm sorry. This is my sense of humor. I mean, this is perfect. And if you're an Iranian mullah, you're probably looking at this and you probably know the U.S. is behind it, because who else is going to have AC/DC? I mean, it's probably not going to be the Russians, right? Certainly not the Chinese. So next up, Ireland is set to ban cars and push people into cities from the countryside. This is really interesting because when you think of Ireland, you think of this beautiful, bucolic country, and the towns are beautiful. And I know Fuji's been there, and he's been, in England and Ireland and Scotland. He's traveled extensively through there. But now the president of Ireland basically wants to collapse the countryside and have everybody move into the cities, and he has policy that's pushing people in that direction. Gentlemen, what do you think about this? I mean, this is happening in many different places, and we're going to discuss this in great detail.
Yeah, I mean, it baffles me. I mean, I wouldn't say by any stretch I'm an expert, but like you said, I've been to Ireland, I've traveled the country, I've driven the whole country. There are big cities, but for the most part, people live in the countryside and live in these villages.
Right.
It's like, the idea, I guess, is to push these people into the big cities to make them reliant on government in the hopes of eliminating carbon emissions.
Exactly.
I mean, also, I'll just say this: the people that live in the country, they don't drive. They're very sustaining. Like they it's not like America. The people over there, like if they have to drive in half an hour, that's like their whole day. Like to me, like I drive an hour and a half. Some people drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to work one way each day in America. You say that to someone over there, and they're like their jaws drop. I mean, they're just baffled. They don't drive like we do over here. So when I heard this, I was kind of like, well, where did this idea come from?
It's just insane, of course, and there's some places that are doing it here too. Couture, what do you think about this idea? I mean, obviously this is
I just have
classic
difficulty.
Europe.
Yeah, I mean, as an American, I just have difficulty even believing this is going on. Like,
yes,
a car, you can't own it. The government wants to. It's almost like kind of going to Soviet, like how that
it
was.
It is, because a car in America is the symbol of the ultimate freedom. It is.
Yes.
It is a symbol of freedom. Your idea to have freedom of transportation, to go anywhere you want to go at any time because it's your car, and as long as you're paying for it, you can do what you want. They're basically saying, we're going to make it really difficult for you to own a car. In fact, we're going to make it so expensive, you're not going to be able to afford it, and you're going to be forced to move into the city. In fact, speaking of that, we have next something very similar to that, and it is the dumbest bill in America. And it is the dumbest bill in America, believe me. This was an easy one to find. The governor of Oregon has the dumbest bill in America. She intends to pass House Bill 2020, which is an emergency climate piece of legislation that will collapse the countryside, just like Ireland, and force people into the cities. And what's interesting about this, it will, of course, increase prices of gasoline. It'll increase prices of energy. It will make it very difficult for people who live in the countryside to be able to survive because it'll shut down traditional industries in Oregon. It is really a landmark piece of legislation. And the Republicans left left the state capitol so that they wouldn't have to vote on this, because in Oregon, you need a quorum, and you need at least 2 of the Republicans to make a quorum with the majority party Democrats in the Senate. And the Republicans said, you know what, we're not going to show up. So they're hiding. And we actually have a clip from the Republican Senate Minority Leader who is talking about this bill. And here's the clip.
What will 2020, as written, do to rural Oregon?
It'll devastate it. Simply because rural Oregon's economy is based on natural resources, and this bill will, the way it is currently written, will devastate those industries and natural resources, whether it's the timber industry, the fishing industry, the agriculture industry, the mining industry. Any of those industries and manufacturing will be devastated the way the bill is.
And I just want to add this. I want to add this to the Senate Minority Leader, what he said. I pulled up the bill, House Bill 2020, and it says on the impact statement, the impact explanation is what they call it in Oregon, of what the bill will actually do. It says, this is a 30-year program that reconfigures much of the energy sector and the state economy. They're completely redoing the state economy with this bill. Naturally, any long-term program of this nature carries with it many uncertainties. The state of Oregon contracted Berkeley Economics Advising and Research, BEAR, as they're known, to model and assess the program. And BEAR issued a report in November of 2018, and the BEAR report made few simplifying assumptions to reduce some of the uncertainties. In other words, they're going to pass a bill that they really have no idea what the impact's going to be over the next 30 years. The bill is 100 pages long. Gentlemen, thoughts on this?
Well, I'm convinced that this is 2 things. This is a movement. It's a coordinated effort. It's not just in Oregon. It's not just in Ireland. You're going to see it across the state, especially in these Democratic controlled states. This is an attack on 2 things. 1, personal freedoms, like you mentioned earlier. This is personal freedoms, like your ability to move freely and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And 2, I think this is targeted at rural areas, because who's in the rural areas? This is an attack on Trump. This is an attack on Trump voters.
Trump voters.
When you look at a map of the United States and the voting block, you see rural red and city blue, right? I mean, and they want all that red to move into the city and become reliant on state government, federal government.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's a coordinated strategy. I'm convinced of it.
I completely agree.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't she so the Republicans left because they didn't want to vote on this. They didn't want to give them quorum. Didn't she try calling in the state troopers to physically bring the...
almost to handcuff them against their will.
That's really, the beatings will continue until morale improves there.
Right. It's very Stalin-esque. It's Stalin-esque.
What I love is that apparently all of the members of the minority party are out of the state. They're in different states. They're literally like, I mean, the people are like, well, they have jobs to do. I'm like, no, they're protecting personal freedoms.
Yes.
Like, is that higher than voting
And they didn't go to California. They went to states like Idaho.
Yeah.
Which I love. I think it's awesome. But, here's the thing. Major cities in states are dominating the electoral process, certainly in some states, right? And those cities use their electoral dominance to collapse the countryside. And we're seeing this in Ireland. We're seeing this in Oregon. And we're also seeing this in California. And it's forcing people to move into cities by way of emergency crisis legislation, because this is an emergency piece of legislation that she has proposed here, that she's trying to pass, of course. And all of this is a precursor to what will happen to America if the Electoral College is eliminated. It's the tyranny of the majority. I'm absolutely convinced, but we're seeing this in microcosm on a state-by-state basis. Guys, comment on that. Just real quickly. I mean, thoughts on that?
That's absolutely why the Electoral College was put into place. It's working exactly as it was designed to do.
Yes.
And so
agreed.
And we're seeing states, of course, do the opposite. And of course, they're subjugating their minorities, in this case, Republicans and Trump voters in the countryside and elsewhere, and saying, you know what, you don't matter, and we're going to do everything that we can to bankrupt you and to make life so difficult for you. You're going to be forced to move into the city, and we don't respect your way of life. I mean, it's really disrespectful, in my opinion. And next up, an Ohio bill would facilitate clean energy. We're bringing this up, guys, because in Forbes magazine, they talk about an Ohio bill. I think it's Ohio Bill 6.
I think so.
And that particular bill would allow clean energy subsidies to be given to nuclear power plants, because otherwise the nuclear power plants would be closed if they're going to give the subsidies rather to clean energy sources such as wind and solar, but not to nuclear. Eventually the nuclear plants will close. And so this is a great article about this. And the point is, there's a solution that is carbon free that doesn't involve collapsing the countryside, right? I mean, Andrew, you know a lot about this.
Yeah, I mean, I get, like, I'm not a big fan of subsidies, so, like, the other option would be, like, just get rid of the subsidies and make it all equal, and the winners will win, right, if you have a good business. But, yeah, I agree. Like, if you don't get the subsidies if you want to support something, support clean energy. Nuclear energy has zero carbon emissions.
Zero emissions, right.
And I mean, there's no scientist, I think, in America, unless you're Bill Nye, maybe, that will say that, look, if we got rid of all nuclear, all natural gas, right, that we'd be able to sustain ourselves with solar and wind. It's impossible. It's not scientifically possible.
It's not with current technology. It's not.
No.
And the thing is with nuclear energy, it's possible today, right? Absolutely. I mean, right? I mean, Adam, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as knowledgeable in nuclear energy, I think, as you guys are, but absolutely, I find it very curious that Democrats don't want to explore this carbon-free option when they keep saying we need to reduce our carbon footprint. You have a solution to do that cost effectively.
Yes.
And base grid power that will supply all the power our country needs.
Absolutely. Right. It's a solution that's available today, but instead they want to collapse the countryside and basically move everybody into the cities, because this is about government control. This is about Stalin-esque control without question in my mind. Next up, the Nevada governor vetoes the Compact of States, an attempt to circumvent the Constitution and the Electoral College. We have a clip from Kevin Wall. He's a radio talk show host in Nevada, and we want to play this clip about this particular bill in Nevada. Here it is.
Well, if you want Nevada to be a flyover state, it's a great idea. If you want New York and you want California to dictate who our next president's going to be, it's a phenomenal idea.
So there you go, right? First of all, states like Oregon, they collapse the countryside, so therefore you have a one-party system. The one-party system gets more and more in control. It becomes and looks more and more like a Stalin-esque kind of society and a kind of a state. And then you have this impetus in certain states across the country. They're basically saying, well, the Electoral College really doesn't matter, because whatever the popular vote is at the national level, we're just going to give all of our electoral votes to that particular candidate, in which case you're basically saying, well, there's no Electoral College. So why would you ever go to Nevada, which is essentially what he said. The state's too small in terms of population to ever count. Gentlemen, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it was Ben Franklin, like when this is going way back to the founding of our country, when they were right after the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution was just written. Somebody asked him, what form of government have you given us? And he said, it was either a democracy or a republic. A
republic, yep.
If you can keep it.
If you can keep it.
And I think that this is the perfect example of that, if you can keep it. Right now, these states have their power to not be bullied around by the larger population states, and if they willingly give it away, if they vote it away, I think it's a terrible idea.
It
but
is.
That's their impetus.
Because who would ever stop in a state like Iowa? Who would ever stop anywhere in the Midwest? You're going to just go to the large states with that in terms of population. You're going to go to the large population
Not even the
centers.
States, just the cities.
Just the cities, yes. And you're going to and so you now have what is the tyranny of the majority, which is incredibly dangerous. Of course, it destabilizes our society. And talk about getting rid of diversity. I mean, the Democrats that talk about diversity, they don't want diversity. They don't want anyone to live in the countryside that thinks differently from them. Yeah. They want them to come into re-education camps inside the city, and it's like a Chinese thing.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I mean this all stemmed from obviously the 2016 election. Hillary won the last two, I guess, because Bush Gore as well. But Hillary won the popular vote, and people want to say, oh well, if she won the popular vote, she should be elected. But what they don't realize is, like you said, like you guys just mentioned, is that you're going to lose all of that attention. These presidents are literally going to have to go to like 5 cities in the United States. Like no New Hampshire, like you said, like
Yes,
this last election cycle, we saw Trump hold massive rallies in states like Alabama and
that no one
places
cared
that,
about.
No one cared about, and Hillary didn't go to them.
Never.
Which clearly it hurt her, right?
It did.
So the Electoral College was brilliant. Our founders were truly brilliant, and people say, "Oh, we're a democracy." No, we're a republic, like Adam said,
we're a republic.
for a reason, just like this. Is that
Exactly.
the majority doesn't destroy and subjugate everyone else.
Absolutely. And here you have perfect proof of it with the dumbest bill in America, the Oregon governor who just, basically puts this bill in to copy what Ireland's doing. It's just the dumbest thing. So next up we have Marshall Madoff. He's an inventor. He has no degree in science whatsoever. And he has found an alternative fuel and an alternative for plastics. And the way he's done this is to transform plant life into usable fuel. And the plant life, of course, the sugars and so forth. By the way, MIT's been trying to do this for years. They interviewed Marshall Madoff on 60 Minutes. We don't have a clip on this because 60 Minutes protects their content pretty well. But it's definitely worth seeing because it's kind of proof of why college should not be free. Because here's a gentleman who didn't study this area, and he's just he has an incredible mind. He's a free thinker, and by just thinking freely, and by studying this for 10 years internally in his home, he's figured it out. And even the MIT professor agreed, yeah, we've been trying to do this, and he actually did it. It's incredible. Gentlemen, thoughts on this? Go ahead.
When you first started talking about it, I thought you were mistaken. I thought you must have meant AOC discovered how to do plant-based materials.
Because, Al Gore's discovered the internet.
Yes,
Joe Biden is going to cure cancer.
AOC solves the climate crisis.
Absolutely.
But I think, and going back to the guys
discovered garbage disposals.
But going back, I can't think of a more perfect example thinking back to the Home Depot guys. Here we've seen perfect examples of government trying to legislate down on people.
Absolutely.
Here's what we want. And we keep seeing, hey, the free market is coming up with these solutions that are leaps and bounds better than anything these government bureaucrats have thought up.
Absolutely. So that really is to me the talking point. I mean, the idea that the free market, when it's allowed to work, you have people who have great ideas, great inventions, and then money is attracted to them to be able to solve great problems. And look, I think everybody agrees plastics are a great problem. I think, and I know millennials, they're very passionate about this, and I respect them for that, by the way. But I also think that, an alternative fuel would be great too. It would be great to have all kinds of different fuels available and let the marketplace decide. I mean, that to me makes the most sense. So anyway, any final thoughts on this, guys, before we sign off?
My final thoughts are there's an attack on your personal freedoms, and millennials don't get sold on just the free stuff, because your personal freedom and ability to start a business, earn your own, make your own life is more important than student loan debt.
Exactly. Millennials, don't get bribed by the Democratic Party. They're trying to bribe you. It's so obvious. And we can't allow the countryside to be collapsed, because people should be allowed to live wherever they want to live and live out their lives in peace without being told by the Stalinists where they must live. So I want to thank everybody for joining Mark of the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to Andrew Fujiniti and our producer, Adam Katora, sitting in for Squirrel. Check us out on Facebook. We'll see you next time.